Hi, this is Roslynn Eve, and I'm the author of The Art Advantage. This is episode 11, and you'll notice in my other 10 episodes that we've used painting examples, so I thought that I would also use some photographic examples so that the photographers can also get a sense of just how dramatically these categories and ingredients affect photography as well, because they do. Okay, so today we're using one of my husband's images. He's the photographer. I'm the painter. And I'm using his mediocre and poor images as examples so that you don't think that my husband is a poor photographer, but these make for good explanation or teaching examples. Now, in this first image, you can see that the image is tightly cropped, if it was cropped. I don't think it was. So the photograph was taken like this. And I want you to be aware that this is an issue, because you'll find that people are more comfortable when there's space on the side in which animals or people are facing. In this case, it's a side view. We will be discussing in more about front views and things like this as we do some more video tutorials, but today we're looking at light and dark, and I use the terminologies that work best with my method, and this is the Roz method of practical art analysis, and that's what I am. I analyze the strengths and weaknesses of an image and how to make them better, stronger images. So you can see that giving this extra space on this side, that it holds your attention more than this one, and you're probably wondering why. The reason for that is in the category of light to dark, it's the full range. We have extreme white and extreme black, and anything close to it is more of an extreme end, so you tend to notice it more. Anything in between, whether it's a color or whether it's grayscale, tends to be more of a neutral unless it's a really vivid color like red, okay? If it's like a bright red. But anything else tends to be more neutral, so you'll find that unless it's a really light or really dark color, you're not as drawn to it. So therefore, when we add on, see here we've got more of equal portions of light, dark, and neutral. Here we have larger portions of dark, larger portions of neutral or medium shades of color, and so you're going to tend to want to look at the white. It's more precious because there's very little of it. So that's where your eye will naturally tend to gravitate. So now all of a sudden you know where you're supposed to look using that category and using it better, which the right one is better for the use of that category. It makes it more of a main area of interest. Okay, and when we add the grid lines, let's just do that here. The rule of thirds. Let's talk about the rule of thirds. Some of you may know what it is, and this is not my concept. The rule of thirds basically divides it into 3 sections sideways and 3 sections from the top down. Okay, so it doesn't matter the size of the image. You can see that we're making 9 equal portions, whether it's looking at the smaller image or the larger image. Also, any object, person, or area of interest that is placed on a line, or that is especially on the cross points where these lines cross, are the cross points, and there's 4 of them. You see the 4 cross points here, here, there, and there. Let's do the little grabby hand there. Maybe you'll be able to notice it a little better now. So yes, if you do the cross points. Now in this case, you've got the white is on one of the areas, one of the lines, so it's an area of interest. The ear is, okay, well, because of the And again, we're just talking that ingredient, light to dark, that's neutral because it's not really light and it's not really dark, and the little tiny bit of dark here just doesn't draw your attention because it's chunked into tiny little pieces. Larger areas or masses like this and this are going to be more noticeable. So it becomes a neutral even though it's on a third line. So again, I want to say that things can bend rules, like the rule of thirds can be bent to a certain extent because of the recipe of the ingredients and how they're used together, whether it supports each other or whether it's conflicting with each other. So what I'm saying here is, in the rule of thirds, that's how the rule works. So if you're a photographer, you're going to crop this so that the eye is closest to or on the main area, whatever you want to be your main area of interest is on the cross point or one of these lines. And the interior space and the interior lines, you'll find it's more interesting than out here on the side. Okay, but anyway, you play with it and you'll understand what we're talking about. Even just taking an image and moving a small frame around on the image to see what happens. Okay, so we've covered that. Now I want you to notice the eye is there. The ear is now being neutralized. When you look at this image on the right, the eye is now still on the line. The white is still on the line. Maybe not quite as much, but it's still close to and somewhat on the line here, okay? And you'll notice that the ear is neutralized because it's no longer on there. It's neutralized even more, so you tend to want to look at it less. If this mass was on a line, or especially on a cross point, then you would want to notice it because it's a small extreme of dark, you see? But not so in this case. Notice how now that the nose is becoming closer to the third line, that it's becoming more of an area of interest. Okay, so let's get this one, which is a larger version, and we'll put that on there as well. And you'll notice that there's not a whole lot of difference between where the eye, see, it's still on the cross point, you see? But if anything, it's even closer to the cross point. And notice again that the nose is closer to the cross point. So in other words, in terms of the thirds rule, this one is even better that way if we're looking at that as being the area of interest. Okay. Now let's get rid of and look at from, whoops. And look at from light to dark here again. And notice that when we look at the light to dark, how this makes you now want to look in that direction. So if the space was all behind the dog, it's not going to be as good as having the space in front of the dog. So using the ingredients correctly, then you're going to be more aware when you're taking the photograph, or whether when you're painting it so you don't have to repaint. You're going to be more aware of the ingredients and how they work so that you will do it correctly to start with and have a better image. I'm just going to touch on the categories that we've used in this photograph. Now, we've talked a lot about the rule of thirds and how things are contained according to the rule of thirds. We talked about the range of light to dark, which is another ingredient, and we've talked about color, which is the green, and also we also have detail, which I haven't really mentioned, but you see that we have that ingredient in this image as well. And you see why you need the extra space, which is another ingredient in this image, why you need the space on the right, because the dog is facing to the right. So this is now why, if you look at the first image and compare it to the second image, why you tend to want to look at the right-hand image more. tends to feel like there's a more better comfort level there, and it seems to have more of a story because now you're paying attention that the dog seems to be looking in that direction, where you don't really, you just kind of look at the first image and you just aren't really interested. So if you were hanging one over, on your wall, which one would you want to hang? You see what I'm saying? Or put in a pet food store. Basically, you're going to be much more aware if you pay attention to these things and have a much better image. Okay, thank you. I hope you found it interesting. This is my book, The Art Advantage. You can find it on Amazon.com or Amazon.ca. And I put a link in the description of this video that you can take that right directly there. So I hope you found this tutorial interesting and informative, and if you would like to subscribe, well, then we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Okay, thank you.